And good evening. It is 7 p.m. here in the JMC Ministry Studios. This is Chillicothe, Ohio, and you are listening to Eternal Flame News. This is the last of a 2-week, Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern program that we wanted to give to you while I was on, I guess we call this, spring break? Well, there are many things going on in the world. One of the things is the Mexico earthquake. What is it, 7.9? They're still worried about the effects that's going to happen to the rest of the world as pertaining what's next. 7.4 we see at 12:02 p.m. at the local standard time, and I'll show you guys an image of it right here at the official website. 12:02 p.m. and the epicenter is right here at the base. One of the things that I've noticed about earthquakes recently is not only the magnitude, but the amount that is occurring in the world. We also have on the 14th of March, that I haven't covered on a show, is Japan. What in the world is going on with Japan? I mean, these amounts of earthquakes in Japan, another 6.9 on the 14th, not even less than 20 miles. Looks like it was off the east coast of Honshu, Japan. I'm curious as how many Christians sit here and actually wonder when you go to the USGS website and you just do a quick view, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm getting ready for you guys to see a quick view of the world as we see it live, worldwide. Earthquakes. Anything in red is the last hour. Anything in blue is the last day. And if you see, here's some right above, around Indonesia, over here in Japan. You see the insaneness going on in Japan? I know you can't see it very well, so let me zoom in. Look at how many are happening last week, all the way up to Russia, and then all the way over. One of the interesting stories about earthquakes is the simple fact that too many people want to not believe the Bible. And the Bible's clear that in the end times we will have more earthquakes. This is not just something, I made up. This is a true fact. Here, right below, check this out. See this? Last day, last hour. And normally, for those of you that are really into the scientific side of earthquakes, you should know about the Ring of Fire. You should be very familiar with why is it called the Ring of Fire. Well, the Ring of Fire goes along the fault lines of all of the continents connected together. And normally when you have a tectonic shift of one plate rubbing against the other plate or moving away from a plate or however, the earthquake occurred, you always have volcanic activity. One of the things that many people are discussing, in the 80s it was Mount St. Helens, then overseas not too long ago, the big cloud over Iceland and over all of Europe. We're kind of asking the question in the scientific realm, what volcano could possibly occur next? Will it be another Mount St. Helens? Will it be the one in Yellowstone Park? The list goes on and on and on. This is something that many people need to watch and pay close attention to. Now on some good news, for those of you that are actually here in Ohio, you are going to jump for glee for the first time ever in the Sweet 16 NCAA tournament history.
Madness is down to its Sweet 16.
Check this out.
For the first time in history, 4 of those teams come from the same state.
Ohio has 4 schools in the Sweet 16. That has never happened before. One of them, Ohio University, has never made it this deep into the dance.
13-seed Ohio U is the state's sweetest surprise, but a Fox Sports analyst...
I'm not going to go any further in the video, but you guys pray for Ohio and the teams that are out here. This could be a possible ministry tool because I know there's Christians on all the different teams. This is the reason why I was bringing it up. I know a lot of people, especially in Ohio, jump for glee that I'm even covering a story like that. But I have another motive behind it. I realize a lot of people, when you look at Jeremy Lin and then you look at Tim Tebow, who in the college realm is possibly a Christian right now that can move up to the professional level and can reach souls for Christ. I'm hoping the day will come where somebody will stand up for the truth and the truth will actually set you free. I'm quite curious, though, what the next step is going to be. I mean, for those of you who are interested, I do attend a branch of Ohio University, so I understand that there are Christians from my area that go there. My wife wanted me to let you guys know that I attend that school. Now on to another topic that will be related to a future video that we're going to show here in a second. This is actually CBS News, which really surprises me that CBS would point it out. How many times have we heard the blame game from the political spectrum of who is responsible for current administration activity? I've been involved in leadership for different positions, some here locally in Ohio, and I've stepped down from others. And I've always been able to tell people that if I've done something wrong, I'll accept full responsibility for my actions. It's called having integrity and responsibility. But right now we're looking at the national debt and it going over $15 trillion, being told that we have to continually pay more money to our national debt because the responsibilities or lack thereof of a past administration, and that this will continually not go until the end of 2012, but it needs to go another 4 to 18 more years to a grand total of $25 trillion, which this chart doesn't show that part. But that is the communication going on with the political realm for those that are involved in the progressive movement. And I'm kind of dumbfounded that you would want to say that we need $10 trillion more than what you project by the end of 2012, and then we will be out of a recession because you want to put everyone under some kind of guise that we need to have more government control. That means more taxes, that means less money in people's pockets, and more likely if you're a business, you probably won't be able to hire somebody. See, that is something I have a problem with. And honestly, we're going to have to wake up and stop allowing politics in general. Like, I've been involved in it before just to see what was going on, especially here locally in Ohio and nationwide. And now I really stopped doing things locally in some ways and moved to a statewide and federal, and then this is a term that might freak you out, the international level, looking at why it does look like we're having this one world government, global things going on. As we talked about in the other show, there's NATO, there's the United Nations, and then these other collective things, you know, the IMF fund, the International Monetary Fund, so on and so forth. Everybody wants to piggyback off of everyone else. Well, for those of you that have followed the story of the banks, there's been a documentary about the banks, how the banks allowed businesses and the common people to get loans and grants without having to show responsibility that they could pay for it, and then everyone defaulted. But who was responsible to reveal some information? Now, this video I'm going to play talks about major bank resignations, and I'm going to try and explain it to you as we go. I know it's Fox News. This probably tuned out 48% of my viewership. But listen to the judge as he talks, not him. I know people don't want to listen to him.
According to Fox News, senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. There's a long way to go between here and there, so stay with us. It all deals with how the Federal Reserve Bank of New York handled AIG, and he was in charge of that, the American Insurance Group, during the depths of the financial crisis. It's about what he did with them. Geithner headed the bank then. Bloomberg News reports that the New York Fed told AIG to withhold details from the public about its payments to banks. It reports AIG wrote in a draft that it paid banks, including Goldman Sachs, every penny on the dollar for toxic credit default swaps. Those are insurance-like contracts for financial institutions that aren't regulated and don't have to be backed by cash. The New York Fed crossed that line out of the report, according to the report citing emails between the two companies. With us now to help explain this and what the legal ramifications are, Judge Andrew Napolitano. I got to tell you, I just read all that. I didn't read it very well, and I don't understand it.
I think you read it quite well.
I didn't read it well. Would you help us understand?
Sure. Tim Geithner was the president of the New York Federal Reserve Bank in the fall of 2008, when the Federal Reserve and the Treasury and the White House and the Congress decided to bail out AIG.
Right.
In the process of that bailing out of AIG, many, many documents were exchanged. If you went to the bank to borrow money, you'd have to fill out documents. One of the documents AIG filled out said, we owe X dollars to Goldman Sachs, and we plan on paying them 100 cents on the dollar. According to Bloomberg, emails that came out yesterday say that lawyers for the Federal Reserve Bank said, we were told to strike this from the form, so that AIG would not reveal to the Treasury Department or to the public that this money was going to be paid to Goldman Sachs, because that's a politically toxic issue. Goldman Sachs making a fortune, making 100 cents on the dollar with federal funds. Now, if you go to buy a $25 savings bond from the federal government and you falsify the document to acquire that bond, you can go to jail.
That's right.
If you borrow $185 billion from...
Now, I'm not going to go any further into the video, but I'm going to explain what else he's trying to talk about. Normally, when you have a credit and you have a form of transfer of funds, there is a legal, physical, government-backed document that is normally in the public eye. And what has happened is withholding the information from the public is the first issue, but then the bigger issue is when you're transferring these funds and allowing things to happen without having the sanctions that were currently in place. That makes this illegal. This is actually a bomb-shaking, blowing event through the Federal Reserve System, through AIG, and through other banks, that you wonder why we're in the problems that we are today. It's quite simple. It's not something that we as normal people will accept or want to follow. Speaking of government control, for those of you who have followed, I've been involved with the Continuum Care here locally in Ohio, and we've been trying to help the poor and the homeless and the destitute and everything. And they've been specifically telling me that they believe that churches have a right to assist that need, and there's no reason why a church couldn't do that. Well, when we go to New York City again, the Bloomberg administration is doing something known as food police, and what they're wanting to do is they want to block all food donations to all government-run facilities that serve the city homeless. So what that means, government-run facilities, that means if you have a non-profit or if you're directly a government agency, you can't donate food to a shelter. A lot of times there are government-run shelters for 10 to 15 days, depending on where you live. You can't donate anything. Why? Because they cannot value and verify the nutritional content of donated food. There was a person for over a decade led a team of food delivery from Ohab Zeke at the Upper West Side Orthodox congregation. And they're telling them now, because of food safety issues, and this is happening in Houston too, because people have gotten sick from donations and donating the food. Or on the other side of the conversation is, well, if you're a religious entity, you can't get government assistance for food because you're praying or whatever. I've heard both sides of these stories, and all we're doing is hurting more people because you don't want them to pray. You don't want them to do that. And eventually, I would not doubt it if they tell Christians you can't serve food at all. And in Florida, this is already happening. You can't serve food to anyone or give out food without it being verified in some format or another. If you want to cook some warm food or whatever and hand it out, you're told no. So you know what would happen? You know the Sermon on the Mount? When Jesus Christ decided to preach, and then he ends up taking the bread, You know, the loaves and the fish, and the disciples handed out to all these people. You know what happened? Our government, if Jesus Christ was living in the United States today, 2012, the 20th of March, at 7:16 p.m. in Eastern, right here in Chillicothe, Ohio, right in Florida, in Houston, anywhere, and he starts handing out food to, I don't know, 10,000 people that show up. Somebody's going to stand up and say, how do we know this food is fine? How do we know this food is okay? How do we know that this stuff would happen? You know what they would do? First, they would come in and they would tell everyone to leave because they don't have a permit to have that many people. That would be the first thing. They'll be tear gassing people and shooting people and arresting people for hearing a message and handing out food. And then Jesus and his disciples would probably get arrested or fined for using a public location to hand out food. Yes, folks, Jesus Christ would be arrested in current 2012 settings. I totally believe that. That's not an opinion. If they're doing it to other Christians, they would do it to Christ. And the Bible is very clear. It says, whatever you do to the least of these, you do to me too. That's what Christ said. Whatever you do to me, to the least of these, you do to me too. And I'm worried that as we continually go down this path, we're going to fall apart. Now, I've talked about before, and many people are kind of interested in what I mean about this and how all this works. I want you to do your research and educate yourself on the history of nonprofit 501c3. And yes, we will be doing a show in the future on the history of 501c3 and when did it start and what was it about. And we will compare where churches were before 501c3 and why they got involved. Now, one of the things that was interesting about the origins of church was we had a tabernacle, we've had an altar, we've had a sanctuary, and now we have what's known as a church or a building or an experience or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, it used to just be a group of people that would come together and they would want to pray and listen to a message, and they would want to come together and be able to just worship God. There wasn't, a big issue about we got to buy pews and we got to buy chairs and we got to buy a location or something. What if I told you that because of the current situations in America, in the rest of the world, yeah, while there's persecution in the rest of the world, what's happening here in America, we are so focused on the costs of a building, and we in America make buildings so big, and then what happens if people don't come to help pay the building? Or let's say we do pay for the building, because I've seen that. Buildings, debts paid off. What about the water and the electricity and the gas and the internet and so on and so forth? Or the cost of the land if you own the land. Well, who pays for that? Well, normally isn't it a tithe or some kind of personal donation? Well, there is a nationwide trend going around specifically about this subject. What if I told you there is a record number of foreclosures on churches in America? Not the Middle East, not somewhere else, right here in America. This is the Denver Post. Real estate information company CoStar Group looked at a handful 5 years of distressed church sales, found only foreclosures nationwide prior to 2008 when the number jumped to 24. In 2009, the figure was 67. CoStar Group spokeswoman Angela Brown said the market saw a big spike in 2010 with 135 churches sold after a lender-initiated foreclosure. In 2011, there were 138 such sales. States with the highest percentages of church sales were the worst home foreclosure rates: California, Florida, and Michigan. Where are our priorities today? I realize many churches are dependent on donations to keep their doors open. But what happens when this growing trend, and we've talked about this before, there's like 2,000 churches open and like 3,000 close their doors every year or so already in America. What can we do as a church body to keep the body of Christ simultaneously being fed day in and day out? If we're getting to a point where people are either not able to afford to get to church, can't afford to do the things that they need to do, and go on to a next point and take. I'm kind of curious exactly what you feel is important in the world today, because the church's foundations were about having church in homes, and the persecuted church, which we're getting to next, you will see when you start learning about the persecuted church at persecutionblog.com and Voice of the Martyrs or Open Door USA, and the list goes on and on. Especially if you have a missionary coming to your church, you can ask them these questions. Where are services held? And why are there more people getting saved in Africa and the Middle East than they are right here in the United States? I'll say that again. Why are more people getting saved? And we just lost the internet again, Miranda. Why are people getting saved? You're going to have to get off the internet and go reset for me. Why are people getting saved? And I'm guessing we won't be able to be on the internet. I don't know what happened, but we just lost it again. I'm quite curiously wondering, because now it came back. Miranda, it's back.
Okay.
But I don't know if we lost anything, but we'll have to see. Yeah, it kept pausing. Just shut down your computer, Miranda, and we'll just keep going from there. I don't want to lose this. I'm assuming I got pinged somehow.
Okay.
Yeah, everyone else lost their internet. I'm still going for right now. But
Let's move on.
Anyway, this happened yesterday, and I had a feeling because somebody came in the chat room about 2 or 3 o'clock at night saying that they were going to do a hacking on us, and I'm assuming that is exactly what's happening. They probably have our IP and they're trying to overload our service, because that's what I'm seeing right now, is that our IP is being hit multiple amounts of times to try and overload the server.
Alright.
But anyway, the devil's trying to keep me from sharing you this message. So, overseas, the church is growing, and they're being persecuted, and they're having to hide their Bibles, and they're living in their homes and whatnot. But right here in America, we can't even keep our church doors open. That bothers me. So now we're going to go and talk about Voice of the Martyrs. The controversy about what do we teach our children. The Vacation Bible School materials through Kids of Courage program came out in 2011. And they were concerned about what do you tell children about the persecuted church. Now I'm going to load another website that has the message for it. And hopefully it'll load as long as the internet wants to work here. But I have to ask you exactly what is our priorities today, because I realize we need to get the message out and let kids know. And I know it's very sensitive to tell a kid. People died for their faith. I remember when, I'm trying to think back to the youngest time that I heard someone died for their faith. I think it was 8 or 9. It was just the disciples at first, and then it went on to like the Middle East. In the 1040 window, that's what we heard a lot. We were told to pray for a country, and I think we prayed for Saudi Arabia or something like that. And I'm like 8 or 9 years old. This is like vacation Bible school, because that's all I had when I was a kid. But I do remember that some people were willing. And the way the message was presented, said, well, they didn't do anything wrong, because that was one of the questions us kids asked. Well, did they do something wrong? Were they did they have to go to the principal's office? I remember one of the kids say, or another kid say, well, did they have check marks next to their name? Because where I went to school, we had a consequence board, and you would get marks, and when you got 5 or 10, you would get a spanking. Yes, I came from a background where people still were able to spank their children. I'm not hurt. My butt still works. Yeah. But, so, what do you do? It's quite simple. Now, I'm looking at this other article here about how much is too much information for children. Honestly, if we don't, and we lost internet again. Miranda, can you go reset that for me, please? And bring me the phone so that I can call you. Bring me the phone, and then I'll call you once it comes back up. I realize there's a lot of stuff that are trying to stop this program from happening, and I'm not going to let it happen. I'm going to continually go. Because, that's what I need. There's the phone. I realize that people don't want this message to come out. And I'm not going to stop. While I know someone may have my IP, I have ways of stopping it here, because this needs to end, and it needs to end now. And I have one idea where it's coming from. I'm going to take the battery out of my cell phone, because that's normally part of it. And if this stops it, then that answers my question. See, I took the battery out of my cell phone. The message that I'm trying to give you today is quite simple, and I realize that we have lost internet. I will probably end up loading this show as a podcast only, as long as I'm looking at it here, it should be fine. I have all my stories saved and bookmarked, so then there's no reason why none of this stuff shouldn't load, and I should be able to tell you the truth. Because the truth should set you free, and I realize that this show is being stopped only because of what we're trying to do here at James C. Ministries, and I'm not going to let this stop. I know there are people out there that think what we're trying to express and show shouldn't happen. For instance, like these children. Children deserve a chance to hear the truth. Such as Church for the Harvest in Alexandria, 2 hours northwest of Minneapolis, used the curriculum last summer. Children's director Katie Kieger, a former missionary to South Africa, and like Kids of Courage, includes stories from China, Egypt, Nigeria, and North Korea, and India. And the reason why she liked it is she was able to have a conversation with the children, because the kids were relating to some of the stories. Now, when you put a story together and you're actually able to communicate a message, and a message of hope, it ends up opening a door for you that goes way beyond anything that you can imagine. And I realize, while there are people in today's society that want to put a box on Jesus Christ, they want to stop, cease and desist any and all stories about this. I realize that today, that should not happen in today's society. There's no reason why we as the body of Christ should have to have a dialogue conversation pertaining to whether or not someone can really stand up for the truth, such as the message about persecution of Christians across the globe. You know, I realize that people want to try and stop the message of Christ from being shared because they don't want the truth being told. They don't want people trying to express a message of hope and peace and love because they have some kind of fear. It's this weird fear complex that I realize people want to stop. And I realize that as time goes on, as we as Christians continually get attacked all across the globe, this message of hope and peace and in a future, in a simple message of direction for our lives, I realize the devil wants to do everything he can to stop any and all possibilities of the church ever sharing a message. I realize that's one of the biggest issues today, is that a church that continually goes down and around the message of Christ will fall away so quickly. And what am I talking about falling away for? The reason why I'm bringing that up is I'm thinking about these kids. These kids are the future of wherever they live. If they're here in America, they're overseas. And if you don't spread the gospel to the children, the Bible's very clear that when you train a child in the way that you raise a child, it is so important how you raise children. It is so ultimately important, the message of Jesus Christ being shared to children. Because if you don't spread the message of the gospel to the young children, where's the future of the gospel going to be? Where's the future of Christianity as we know it? Because if we continually fall to the wayside, and we continually allow the world to try and take captive all the things that we want to try and accomplish in this world, we are missing out on a bigger picture. We are missing out on what Jesus wants to have, what Jesus wants done in today's society.
Hey,
And I realize,
the router is out. It won't work when it looks like we're getting a storm.
and I realize that Miranda's saying that we're probably getting a storm, and I'm over here actually working on trying to get some other things. So tonight's show is going to be a podcast. I still do have video, but I've got some other things set up here. I pulled out my USB 4 plug, so then I can try and have my extra booster in case something like that happened. So you've already resetted the router downstairs and all that? Twice?
It's out.
Did you turn it back on though?
Everything's on, but it won't.
Everything's on, but it won't come on. So tonight's show will be straight up podcast. Here you go. I'm giving her that phone back. So yeah, this will be a podcast show tonight. There's no problem with that. You know, the devil tries to withhold a message. And as far as I knew, the last thing I looked about a half an hour ago, there's no storm.
The clouds are rolling in.
But there's no storm that was on the internet.
I don't know. Let's just move on.
It's going to be quite difficult for me to move on if I can't pull up the rest of the articles, but let's see what I can do. I might have to close here and save some of these for tomorrow. But, yeah, it looks like the internet's back. Yeah, the internet's back. I just can't get the live stream producer to work for me. Not sure why not, but we'll just keep on going. I'm not stopping just because of a glitch or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, there are things in this world that you may not be able to control. There are things in this world that wants to try and kill, steal, and destroy. And I realize that. I've seen that. I've heard the stories in society, and I've seen how people want to try and change different things and move us to a different place. But I'm not going to let that stop us today. I'm going to continue and continually try and get the message of Christ out there. I realize that we're streaming now. We're on air. I have no access to the chat, so I can't communicate with anyone. But apparently we are still on air recording. I don't know if you can verify that or not, Miranda, but I want you to keep looking at that. I'm just going to finish with one story and then call it a night. If we do have a nasty storm coming, I have to verify this here in a second. So to finish up about children, I've shared with you guys a little bit about my life, that I realized that for our world, our society, and who we are needs to wake up, because the children are our future. And I realize there could be some controversy with messages. I'm like, yeah, there's no storm here, Miranda. There's nothing that I can find.
Let's not talk about that. Let's just move
but,
on. We're not worried
yeah,
about
I was
storm.
wanting to look see if there was a storm so you guys can pray for us as we finish this last 20 minutes of the program. But I'm not seeing a storm. I don't know what's going on. So, we have several other stories that we can cover that we'll be posting later tonight on Eternal Flame News. Everything you've seen tonight that hasn't been posted on the show will be posted on our media outlet there, and we'll just continue with this. Like I said, I'm not going to chance tonight's show as many times as it went on and off as a live video feed. You're just going to get the audio podcast with probably an Eternal Flame News image up. That'll be the fastest way I can get it done and up and ready to go. Well, to give you a preview of what's coming soon, we talked about earlier about the Military Religious Freedom Acts. But what about how our congressmen honestly think? Now, I look at this story from the Christian Post from my friend Alex Marashko, and Americans should know how elected officials rank when it comes to their votes on religious freedom, said Representative Frank Wolf from Virginia. Now, Monday, Open Doors USA released its midterm congressional scorecard for international religious freedom of the 112th session of Congress. And in this, they evaluate each senator and representative record on religious freedom issues. Quote, religious freedom is often called America's first freedom. It is, in fact, at the heart of the American experiment. I firmly believe that Congress has a unique role to play in being a voice for the voiceless, wherever they may be, says Wolf. It is my hope that the work of Open Doors and other like-minded organizations will raise awareness, heighten consciousness, and compel action in the halls of Congress and the administration. Now, coming up here in the future, and I'm assuming this is why we're being attacked and things are being taken away and so on and so forth, is we're working nationwide and worldwide with Christian leaders to get the truth shared, because this is pieces of information that whomever it is, Satan actually using a physical entity, a person, a hacker, to try and overload our internet services or whatever it is, I want you guys to wake up and realize that this message of truth can prevail, and we can have that hope in the future. We can actually move beyond these circumstances, wherever they may be, however it may work. I want you guys to realize that this society that we're in doesn't have to take us out anymore. Because there are too many times and in too many places people want to try and stop getting messages out like this. They want to try and stop a truth from being shared. Well, I'm here to tell you today that Jesus Christ will never be silenced. You can never stop the message of Christ, no matter how much you try, because you're trying to silence me, and that doesn't go well, especially when the truth has been exposed this evening, where we have found out how all across the globe things are going on, where people are having a wake-up call, especially here in America and elsewhere, where a message of truth and hope and peace and joy is being shared. And then the root of evils in the world. I realize that you look at Ezekiel 11:12, it says, "And you will know that I am the Lord, for you have not followed my decrees or kept my laws, but have conformed to the standards of the nations around you." Now, when we continually follow these man-made laws and not follow Jesus Christ, what do you think is going to happen? If you honestly believe what Jesus Christ says, if you honestly believe where the world can go, many things can happen. Deuteronomy 31:6 says, and this will be the last part of the show, "Be strong and of good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord thy God, He will go with you, and He will not fail you, and He will never leave you or forsake you." See, Jesus Christ wants to set you free today. He wants to give you a peace that goes beyond all understanding. He wants you to be able to wake up and see for yourselves the message of not only peace, but the message of how your life should be. Because the world does not want this message of truth, regardless if I'm exposing something or I'm trying to tell you how Jesus can set you free and give you a hope and a plan in the future. Those are things that nobody wants to share. And as long as we continually move in these different plans and places in our lives, in government, in our personal lives, if we don't take hold of the truth of Jesus Christ, disaster can come. And I'm not going to do anything. It's not going to be anything any human is going to do. It will not be. It will actually be an entity coming against you known as Satan. And that's what we need to fight today. We need to fight against Satan and his adversaries and the things that are happening today in society, because that's what we need to go against. We need to allow Jesus Christ to set us free and guide us on a new path. Thank you for coming tonight. God bless you, and we will be on air tomorrow at 7 p.m. I will work on getting this podcast up tonight, and we'll see you soon. God bless.